introduce our first keynote speaker, Oksana Levytska. Oksana's topic today is very timely. She's going to share the very spirit of best practices in education. Oksana has 10 plus years experience teaching secondary level subjects and credit courses in the International Languages Program with the Toronto Catholic District School Board. At present, Oksana acts as a principal of the Ukrainian Saturday School, Ridna Shkola in the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area. At present, Oksana sits as a principal at the, I already said that one, sorry. Oksana has been the chair of the Ukrainian National Federation, or UNF, Canada Ukrainian School Initiatives Committee since 2010. The community activity is aimed to revive, start, and support UNF heritage schools in Canada. And she is an active member of the Ukrainian Canadian School Board, UNF, in Toronto. Recently, she chaired the Ukrainian Canadian Council, UCC, National Ukrainian Education Council. She is an organizer of teachers' conferences and workshops and webinars across Canada and internationally, and now virtually. Oksana co-works with educators in the Diaspora and Ukraine, and willingly sharing novice techniques with her best practices of teaching Ukrainian as a second language. She writes articles for the periodicals in Canada and Ukraine. And currently, Oksana is chairing the International Educational Coordinating Council of the Ukrainian World Congress since 2019. There are a lot of links and resources in this presentation. Those are for your information only if you want to look them up. You do not have to click on these during the presentation, except for the one video, but I will let you know. VWBPE colleagues, join me in welcoming Oksana Levytska.
Thank you very much, Lorraine, for your introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to speak in front of the international educational representatives, colleagues, and respectful audience of the 15th Virtual World Best Practices in Education Conference. It is my honor to represent today the International Ukrainian Educational Community of the Ukrainian World Congress and the International Educational Coordinating Council as part of this Congress. In the light of circumstances and current world events, I will share how virtual technologies and practices are being used to support continued education for Ukrainian students during the war in Ukraine and in other countries. I came across the saying, online learning is not the next big thing. It is now the big thing. That can be much truer now when the generation of our times is experiencing the virtual environment entering into our everyday lives, studying and work. When talking about the dynamic, vibrant Ukrainian communities in the diaspora, we need to know that they have developed in the Northern and Southern America for the period of more than last 150 years. And the comparatively quite young is and still being under foundation and formation, the communities of Ukrainians in the Europe nowadays. Whichever place to live they chose, the first and foremost goals that Ukrainians set up were to preserve their heritage and culture and to pass its traditional principles and history to next generations in their new homelands. To achieve this, the first ones were churches built and schools opened. This was the tendency in the 18th and 19th centuries. The same tendency is seen today as every continent has the representation of a Ukrainian community and schools or programs. In response to the need of keeping traditions from the past generations and educate youth of their heritage roots, at the times when Ukrainian communities grew stronger and became structurally organized, the Ukrainian World Congress International Educational Coordinating Council was founded in 1969. as part of the first Ukrainian World Congress, and it has been continuing its work till present. The Council set up priorities to work closely with educational institutions in the diaspora to further the development of Ukrainian education and nurture the Ukrainian national identity outside Ukraine. The Council has been continuously supporting educational reforms in Ukraine by providing professional development programs for teachers and developing novice approaches towards curriculum improvement in Ukraine's educational system. You will learn about current mutual and joint projects on supporting education further in my presentation. Up to these days, the founding objectives of the councils, as they were outlined back in 1960s, are predominant and relevant in the current dynamic world that is constantly changing. Much more with novice practices approaches more towards advanced technology use. The Ukrainian World Congress International Educational Coordinating Council aims to ensure the continuous communication among schools and teachers in the diaspora where learning is conducted in the Ukrainian language. What have been done so far? Creating and sharing teaching materials on topics of high priority as identified by teachers in the diaspora, supporting Ukrainian education in the world, unifying and engaging teachers, parents, and their interested parties in the nurturing and education of self-identifying and creative generations of Ukrainians. Sharing information on education among educators, involving them into communication about their successes and challenges, and creating professional communities. The last one being the top activity and has greatly developed most recently. During the pandemic, the education around the world had to restructure and upgrade with the focus on advanced technological tools, especially those of virtualization, in order to continue effective functioning in new realities as all the society and all the world that have been affected by its worldwide. Ukrainian education in general, in and out of Ukraine, is student-centered and is traditionally in the face-to-face format. We strongly believe the integrated activities and a combination of language and history, cultural and heritage material, and practical elements of traditional activities bring the best outcome of the learning of the delivered material and exploring new opportunities in learning. In the conditions of lockdown, the International Educational Coordinating Council worked tirelessly with its partners to provide immediate instructional support to the educators of online learning tools. With school and other educational institutions closures in 2019 through 2021, educators in each field at all levels were facing the challenges by instant necessity to quickly switch to distance or remote learning, to have teaching e-resources available, and the instructional resources or manuals for those educators who need to be trained on how to use learning platforms and applications to ensure teachers are capable of providing efficient delivery of materials, accommodating virtual learning with differentiated instructions, using a variety of activities, which also help to reduce stress and workload for students. The series of webinars on online teaching platforms and interactive learning applications were organized in 2019 and 2020. 20 webinars with 500 active participants from 24 countries of all continents. They were school teachers and program coordinators, college and university teaching staff who have mastered online training platforms of Google Classroom, with basics and assessment of student learning using Google Forms, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, ClassDojo, Skincastify, Padlet, Kahoot, just to mention a few. Among those that are mostly used and claimed by teachers as the most effective are Google Classroom, Zoom, ClassDojo, and Kahoot. Another online event that was organized was the National Conference for Ukrainian Educators. The focus of the conference, which held on May 16, 2021, was to provide educators with the opportunity to learn about current teaching approaches and resources in the areas of technologies, media, the arts, history, traditions, and distant education instructions for students aged from kindergarten to high school levels. The conference was organized by the International Educational Council of the Ukrainian World Congress, the National Ukrainian Education Council of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress. It actually turned out into an international conference, which gathered about 300 educators from 20 countries. Among those, Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Estonia, Georgia, Ireland, Jordan, Lebanon, Lithuania, the United Kingdom, Canada, Moldova, Germany, Poland, Portugal, Russia, Turkey, Ukraine, United Arab Emirates, and there were 35 presenters and sessions offered to the participants to choose from. The virtual environment brought another great project that has been extremely successful since its launch in 1992, the Ukrainian Canadian Summer Institute 2021, which was the combination of offline and online practical format for teachers, enabled to have 200 participants of 25 school teams from 20 Ukrainian schools. They were trained by 8 trainers from Canada and 36 co-instructors from Ukraine. What was the outcome of this event, of this educational forum? It was not only the time for training and hands-on practicum, but discussing developing 8 manuals for administrators, vice principals, and psychologists, materials for teaching foreign languages and school subjects. This work moved on to the next stage of creating the teaching resources. It was the time to discuss ideas on how to make schools a better place of learning, present new ideas, overcome fear of changes, practice communication with colleagues. Here is another project in the education. The International Institute of Education, Culture and Relations with the Diaspora, based in the city of Lviv in Ukraine, has been our partner since their foundation and worked closely with the Educational Council to create the communication platform for Ukrainian educators of all levels working in the countries of the world. The communication online platform, Ukrainian Educational World, as it's called, was launched last year. It is an interactive map and forum of Ukrainian schools, programs, and institutions worldwide. It serves to support the exchange of expertise and teaching materials, to modernize and implement innovations in education of the Ukrainian studies subjects in the diaspora, as well as to share knowledge of Ukrainian heritage and history in those countries. Professionally designed and maintained, one can search Ukrainian schools, programs, and faculties internationally by location, their name, or specialty of programs. Educational institutions have access to the tools of downloading and sharing news, materials, events, or to register and promote themselves. The content is divided into themes or categories, easy to navigate even by first-time users. I rank this innovative product as the top IT developed engine in the Ukrainian diaspora educational online world. All the information is presented in Ukrainian only. Presently, the whole world has been impacted by the situation in Ukraine. We are living the world event experiences one would never wish to go through. The worst experiences, I would say, are for young generation. Here are the facts of the migration scale within 1 month since February 24 this year. Statistics of March 23rd to March 28th present the following data. 3.6 million people fled Ukraine, including women, children, and elderly. Today, this number is 4 million. 6.5 million of people moved within the country, with 90% of those who moved or fled are women and children. Approximately 4.3 million Ukrainian children left their homes. It is more than half of all the children in Ukraine. The fact is that in the areas where active military actions are not in place, schools and universities resumed classes for in-person learning. The situation with 730 schools and educational institutions being damaged, out of each 74 have been destroyed completely, and a lot of children displaced, we called upon the need of organizing some sort of virtual online learning for those who are able to connect to the internet. With a large number of Ukrainian families with children coming to European countries, School Education Getaway, Europe's online platform for school education, updates resources daily, and that is a great support for us. They have a specific section there, education and support for Ukrainian refugees. Teachers and students have access to online educational resources in Ukrainian, schooling in Ukraine under adverse conditions. Ukraine's main platform for distance learning is the National Online School of Ukraine, featuring lessons in all subjects by grades, both for primary and secondary school students. In regions where internet access has been disrupted, pupils will be able to watch lessons on Ukrainian television instead. Both the online and televised lessons are integrated into the interactive Google Calendar schedule for easier coordination. Since March 14th this year, schooling has resumed in most regions of Ukraine with the help of distance learning. Ukrainian students, both inside and outside of the country, can access educational online material in Ukrainian. National Online School of Ukraine has successfully been launched, and schools had already adopted a temporary learning mode in the past because of the COVID-19 pandemic. With the martial law in place, Ukraine has shifted to emergency remote teaching. Online lessons for Ukrainian students learning to be. Literally days after the invasion into Ukraine's territory, another initiative has been launched, a call for teachers who can donate a few hours of their time to become volunteer teachers for Ukrainian students, inviting teachers of the diaspora to help with online learning, conducting virtual lessons for Ukrainian students. Once teachers apply, volunteers will be coordinated with the school principals who need extra teachers to build a school schedule during the wartime. More details about the projects are in the form that will be shared with you. Most popular requests from Ukrainian principals are for teachers who can run English-speaking clubs, reading clubs, storytelling clubs. The response from English-speaking teachers was numerous as well. Co-planned and implemented by the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine, Ukrainian public organization Osvitoria, the Ukrainian World Congress Coordinating Council, and Ukrainian Canadian Congress and National Ukrainian Education Council, we have a great video to represent for you. More on this project in the video of Tatiana Sunak, the chair of the Education Council of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress.
Good day, dear colleagues. My name is Tatiana Sunak, and today I'm speaking to you as president of the UCC National Ukrainian Educational Council, but also as a principal of one of the schools in Ukraine. I would like to explain you in a few words schooling situation in Ukraine right now and share with you what can we as global community do to support Ukrainian students and teachers. Since the beginning of Russian war against Ukraine over 300 schools have been damaged. 64 are completely destroyed. Bomb shelters have replaced cozy classroom for children in Ukraine, and instead of the school bell, there is now an air raid siren. All schools in the western part of Ukraine that are not in a war zone are used as shelters for evacuated families. I was talking to my best friend, who is a principal in one of those schools. Thanks to volunteers and sponsors, they were able in 2 days put showers and convert classrooms into bedrooms for 62 families that arrived from Irpin, Kharkiv, Kyiv, and all over Ukraine. None of the schools in Ukraine are functional as schools. But regardless of all the challenges and all the difficulties, during the week of March 14th, all Ukrainian schools resumed online teaching. Ukrainian people believe in victory. They believe in their independence and the bright future of Ukraine. And it is possible only with a quality education. Starting online classes was the only way to restart teaching, but it had and still has a lot of challenges and limitations. Many Ukrainian teachers are supporting Ukrainian army, are in or out of bomb shelters, have no proper devices, or have no access to internet. That's why we launched the Learning to Be initiative with Ministry of Education and Lustre. Its purpose is to help schools where teachers are unable to go online and conduct classes. We are looking for teachers who can donate a few hours of their time to become volunteer teachers for Ukrainian students. You can find more information about the project and how it will be conducted in a registration form that will be shared with you later. But once teachers fill up the form, we will coordinate volunteers with the schools and school principals who need extra help to build a school schedule during these times. At this point, we have almost 150 teachers from all over the world. We have teachers from States, from Canada, from Australia, from Germany, from Italy, but there's 15,000 schools in Ukraine. We need more teachers, we need more help. We are looking for more educators to become Ukrainian teachers, to share their knowledge with them, to provide some consultations on school subjects, to create a space for learning and safe exchange of ideas, or just to offer moral and psychological support during these difficult times. Teachers do not need to know Ukrainian curriculum. They do not need to speak Ukrainian. Most students in Ukraine have basic knowledge of English. And most requests that we receive from principals are for teachers who can run English-speaking clubs, reading clubs, storytelling clubs, but also looking for teachers who can offer project-based learning or share with students something that they are passionate about, or someone who can help a teacher who does not have device to create handout for their class. So possibilities are endless. As long as somebody is willing to help and has time, then we welcome them to join our team. Volunteers have full control of how, when, and how long the volunteer teachers are willing to help. We are hoping for your support and looking forward to seeing you in classes with Ukrainian students. And we hope to see you being part of our army of teachers for Ukraine. Thank you.
Now, next kind of direction that we took that I would like to point out at this time is the themed teaching resources. The first mostly needed steps with the war that started on February 24th were to reflect on the events in Ukraine during the classes with our students. Within a week since the start of the war, the Educational Council developed ready-to-use lesson materials by age categories. So they were divided into 3 of those categories. How to speak about the war in Ukraine, speaking topics for primary and junior levels, with Ukraine in our hearts, materials for language lessons for middle classes, and military aggression in Ukraine for secondary schools students. The fast delivery by means of technology and communication tools allowed these resources to be distributed among Ukrainian educators momentarily. Zoom platform became a popular communication tool for organizing various training sessions, conferences, and presentations. It was used to connect high school students with Marcus Kolger, the founder and director of DisinfoWatch, during one of the latest leadership speaker series session, Fake News in Today's World. You have the link to view Marcus Kolger's profile. Many other platforms with levered interactive resources became available as well. Example of those are materials from early child development programs to methodological support of teachers, audio stories and fairy tales for children, online kindergarten from Megago with movies and cartoons for children specifically. The next approach was the psychological support. With the flow of requests from educators in Ukraine and diaspora for psychological support for teachers, parents, students, there was the response to this psychological support. One of those was ways to help students in response to world events. The guidelines of the School Mental Health Ontario for teachers on how to support students after world events were translated into Ukrainian and made available for teachers. Another great resource that I found on one of the websites of World Health Organization section specifically of the world events is Doing What Matters in Times of Stress. It is an illustrated guide of the World Health Organization available in many languages, including Ukrainian. Doing What Matters in Times of Stress is an illustrated stress management guide of coping with adversity. The guide aims to equip people with practical skills to help cope with stress. A series of psychological and counseling sessions with specialists are offered for teachers, parents, and students through online platforms daily, starting March 9. Those are Classroom During Difficult Times and Self-Care for Teachers. You can see the link to the database of psychologists, psychotherapists who offer free consultations in different countries. They are English speaking, with rapidly growing English language learning interest in Ukraine. Online resources and tools are offered on the platform. One of those is the most recently launched free English speaking course. It is an international private school start time that is launching free course of spoken English for Ukrainian students aged from 6 to 10. Another great resource that you may want to refer to that I would like to mention here, the professional research on technology, enhanced additional language acquisition, and educational reform in Ukraine has been done by the researcher, investigator, and curator of digital collaborative learning tools for language teachers and learners, Uliana Plaushchak-Pidzametsky. She has specifically focused on digitally enabled Ukrainian language learning, technology-enhanced language learning, incorporating new electronic resources. And the links are available for you. The reference to the resources available on the ResearchGate platform. Now, I would like to show you some categories of what the International Educational Coordinating Council is, which is on the slide with the email that you can reach to us by using it, and also the website of that council that you can always refer to, visit that website. We have the information available both in Ukrainian and language. And thanking you for your attention and attendance. I would like to point out that it is my strong belief in education and its continuous progress and the power of unity that I deliver my message to you today. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Oksana. I'm sure there are many here in the audience that would be willing to accept your teaching challenge. Look at all the applause.
And thank you for the opportunity. It was my honor to share with you my thoughts, my findings, my ideas, and to show the mutual, united effort of all educators that we are working on during these challenging times for our students.
So we have a question from Gentle Heron. She asks, just 1 minute, let me grab that. How important is delivering support for, that's one. How important is delivering support for national culture in a time of extreme disruption?
Thank you for the question. It is very important. I would just like to share experience that we had. The first Saturday class that we had after the start of the war, we had an option. Our supervisors gave us an option. If teachers are so much under stress that they are not able or they cannot literally grab together their emotions and deliver their virtual classes or online classes on that day, we could say that we will just post the material online and let it go. I ask my teachers, please be with our students, especially I've got a call from, actually a couple of calls from parents asking, are we going to have the classes this Saturday? And I understand right away that how important it is for people be together. And once what we noticed during those classes, parents were sitting next to their students in front of the screens of the computers, participating in the class. And when we were singing the national anthem of Ukraine, parents would sing with their children. We addressed a lot of symbolic into the class. We addressed a lot of historical events about the brave people of Ukraine. And that really what supports us up till now. And this is what moves us going on.
Thank you. Great answer. Great question. So as a follow-up, Gentle asks, thinking back to before the war and the needs it created, how do you convince students that their national cultural study is important in their developing lives?
We have great support of parents and community. We are united. We work in unity, and that's really different angles support from different entities or parties really helps for students to understand it is important. It's not just now with the start of the war that we are putting that importance into our lessons. It has been always the focus of the lessons, not only to deliver the language learning. It was history, it was heritage, it was culture and traditions that were integrated into the program of teaching the language that's inherited those students either by the first generation who's here in North America, specifically in Canada where I am now, or it's the fourth generation. The importance is always there. So it's been a process of really making that pride of that the background the students are coming from.
Thank you. And now we have a question from Shiloh. And I'll get to your question in a minute, Bethany. There's another question ahead of it. So Shiloh asks, with this unique online platform that reinforces spoken, and I assume written Ukrainian, have you noticed in the past decade an increase in students entering in STEAM or STEM programs compared to a decade and a half prior to implementing online programs? Do you encourage students to pursue the hard sciences more than the traditional method of education?
Okay. What I think that we are happy that we have programs at the higher level, postgraduate programs and faculties in many countries of the world, and there was an enrollment of students to specifically explore different Ukrainian studies subjects or material. And I believe that with the events that really brought up attention to the liberty and freedom and independence, there will be more enrollment. I would say that we had steady enrollment, but I anticipate that this enrollment will really get higher after these events.
Sorry, I had my mic off. That's helpful. So here's my friend Day, who's very interested in museums, and he asks, the obvious question is what virtual worlds are being used in Ukraine. I was fortunate to chat with a Ukrainian on Second Life and learned a lot more than we were hearing in the news. In particular, there are amazing museums in Kyiv that are in danger of being damaged. So I think the question is there something we can do around that?
Even thank you for the question again. Even before those tragic events during the pandemic, the system or web of having virtual tours over the museums, Ukrainian, especially in Ukraine, it was very wide practice of students having virtual sessions of virtual tours of museums. So even as the current president of Ukraine said, you can destroy our houses, you can destroy our heritage places, but you will never destroy our past. You will never destroy our desire to move on. So all those virtual tours and materials are available, no matter what happens to, unfortunately, to those places of heritage, sightseeing, historical places. We will still have access to those, and hopefully they will be restored at the soonest.
Thank you. And now we have a question from Bethany. And Bethany is a librarian. And she asks, for those of us who work in education administration, but are not teachers per se, what can we do to help? Should we fill in that web form?
I would encourage that you, that form that you've been seeing in the video and is being shared with you, that form is for those who can offer teaching. Teaching does not mean just the curriculum program, lesson-based sessions. Also, even administrators, if you have passion in something, if you have the topic that you are willing to talk and share it with the students in English, feel free to fill it in. Even if you are an administrator, you can fill in the form for other teachers that are within your educational community. You can connect with those volunteers and they will respond to you based on what your suggestions could be. You will come up with a plan.
I think that's very exciting. So there you go, Bethany, who's now informed me she's not a librarian, so I had her mixed up. So we have another question from Katie, and I'm just going to put that in there. And for your information, the Lindens are this is Second Life is run by Linden Lab, and so we call the people who are there Lindens. So Katie said, I've heard that the Lindens have created a whole set of Sims just for education. Will you be taking advantage of that? Is that something you'd be interested in?
Absolutely, absolutely. I didn't hear all question, but I understand that there is an offer to use the books or materials from the library.
From the library? No. This is about, there's something called Eduverse, that we're creating a space for educators here in Second Life. But we do have many libraries and resources that could be used as well. So yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Any ideas that we can think of? We can always connect and brainstorm or try to coordinate. Absolutely, we will be happy with any possible material and support, methodology, ready to go, handouts, everything as mentioned, and we are very much focused on the practical part, meaning interactive activities. So to engage those students, because what happened, one of the and another example that I want to share with you, and you probably heard it on the video, that one of the schools, when trying to connect with the students for the first time after March 14th, they had 81% of attendance, and the kids were so happy to see each other from kindergarten to grade 11. So any possible ways for us to engage them into even communication, meaning those speaking clubs, into reading books, into any materials that would be good for them to rely on, that would be greatly appreciated.
And Letty asks, I have found that self-care for teachers is essential across all education systems, but certainly no more so than under the current conditions for Ukrainian teachers. What sorts of strategies do counselors use or encourage in these programs? Could they generalize to other teachers?
Basically, they're psychologists or counselors who provide or offer their sessions for teachers, students, or and parents. They first try to investigate at the beginning of the session what the needs are, and they try to accommodate their session to the topic or to the point, to relieve that stress, or if it's grievance. So they really navigate through each session, so they do not have one strategy, but well, of course they will offer their step-by-step advice, or kind of exploration of the problem, of the issue that those participants came with, but they go on a daily basis depending on the audience that they have during those sessions. And it's really, in many times, spontaneous counseling, due to the events that really rapidly changing, but they of course offer the strategies, the tactics. They talk about how to care for yourself. If you don't care for yourself, it will be hard to care for others. That's the message specifically to the teachers.
Just wants to know what ages will we be teaching, and unfortunately this is our last question.
Okay, you mean about the, you mean the form and the online learning that we are appealing to join or to register for? These are kids from the kindergarten to grade 11. There are various age groups there. Basically, we have all the grades there represented in the resuming the remote learning in Ukraine. So any grade, any direction that you would like to go with in terms of the type of the lesson or the conversational topic. Any possible accommodations in teaching our kids would be a great opportunity for us to connect.
That comes to the end of our questions, and it comes to the end of our session. Oksana, I'm so pleased to have met you, and I hope that we can continue our collaborations. And as everyone here in the audience, they're talking about their museums and their libraries and the things that they can do to support and help you. And look at all that applause. So thank you very much, and expect to hear from us.
Thank you very much, and stay connected. Keep in touch.